We're talking to Tim Kennedy, talking to the president about the border and what's going on the border this week. And I said, if I were, a Mexican citizen and knowing that my government was in bed with the cartels, I would be hoping that, some special forces just show up in the middle of the night and start killing people in these cartels. And he said, well, that would be news breaking if I said that would be a good idea. But, I hope it doesn't come to that. But it was clear that is on the table. That really has to happen, does it not? That is a collapsed narco state in Mexico, isn't it?
Yeah, the rules of war that we are going to be experiencing for the next 5 to 10 years are not the traditional maneuver warfare that people remember from Korea and from Vietnam and from even GWAT, where we know who our enemy is. These are going to be businesses. These are syndicated criminal organizations that do not fight fair, and the cartel owns both the businesses, the corporations, and the criminal networks that are involved in that. So yes, it's absolutely on the table, and the group of people that are sitting on the go button are absolute savages, Mr. Beck.
I know they are. I know some of. I know some of them, and they are and they're just they're just chomping at the bit to go. I know.
That's the truth. We're in conversation with the cartels right now, and the cartels are saying, "Hey, we don't want to die. We don't want to be wiped off the face of the planet," which we know is about to happen. So, are there other options where, hey, what if we stop human trafficking? What if we stop fentanyl production entirely? What if we sex slaves? What if all of that just goes away? What if we stop and seal the border on the south side? What are you going to would we maybe be allowed to transport, some cocaine and some marijuana? I'm totally fine with this. If we stop fentanyl, we stop human trafficking, we stop gun smuggling, and we stop the invasion of our border, I'll and we don't have to do a whole bunch of killing, whatever. But they know they're on the brink of.
I hope they do.
The chance of existence.
I hope they do. The when you look at what is happening there and what they're bringing over here, it has to stop. Dead in its tracks. It has to stop, and it has to stop soon. I had horrible pain in my hands. I had a hard time moving them. I could barely work with them. I couldn't write or type or anything. I tried everything. Then I found Relief Factor. Relief Factor is a 100% drug-free supplement developed by doctors, and it's safe to take daily. It made a real impact for me and so many others. Try their 3-week quick start now, $19.95 at relieffactor.com. The president is dealing with these courts, and which I think is just judicial insurrection, as Mike Lee puts it, and it's got to stop. The president has to protect our borders and has to protect our cities. This is, this is the Opium Wars done to China by the English, 200 years ago, 150 years ago, and now they're doing it to us. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
Tell me about the Christians and genocide that you believe is on the horizon.
Just yesterday, back at the White House yesterday, listening to some briefs about there's some brilliant companies that are able to do predictive modeling using literally every public and classified source of information, and there's these events that are pretty predictable. They predicted what was going to happen in Afghanistan, predicted what was going to happen in Ukraine. They see regionally that on the very near horizon, as soon as late summer, we are going to see real instability throughout CENTCOM and the Indo-Pacific region. And some of those things, some of the catalysts that are the data points are what are the killing of Christians, and it's happening all over CENTCOM. And
explain CENTCOM for anybody who doesn't know what CENTCOM means. Explain that.
If you just imagine the Middle East, starting kind of in North Africa and Western Asia, and everything that has lots of deserts and lots of Muslim countries just by coincidence, there's also Israel sits in CENTCOM, one of the few non-Muslim democracies in that whole entire region. And, the Houthis and Hamas and Hezbollah, and then in former countries like in Syria and Iraq, Afghanistan, those places, it's just a massacre of Christians right now.
Tell me about this predictive model. Why is it saying that it is going to get so bad? What's coming our way?
We are on if you just look in the past month, you can look to Syria, you can look to the next to Erbil, you can look to the Congo, where you see thousands of Christians being killed. You see Muslim converts that were being specifically targeted. Down in Congo just last week, another 29 Christians were killed. In 2025, in like the coastal region of Syria, there was like this region of violence. Another 1,000 were killed. And so if you take, if we're going to look at just civil unrest in a region and try to predict the instability of a particular administration or government, there's a whole bunch of, and we can take historical data from the past 50 years and start looking at, okay, economically, what is happening for instability? What is happening culturally? What is happening in the markets? What's happening in like really clear data points? And we have this bell curve of what's normal, and then you have these outliers that then keep occurring every time there's a coup or every time there's genocide or every time. And
right.
There's enough data now where we, especially with AI, and we can scrape all of history, we can then very accurately start, on the special operations side, if I'm trying to find somebody in space and time, that's used to be a difficult thing to predict where a human is going to be, so I could, maybe bring them to justice. And if we look in the first 95 days of the president in office and our intelligence community, specifically the Tulsis and the Sebastian Gorkas, going to work with, Kash Patel, enabling them, and Pam Bondi, 45 Americans that have been illegally detained abroad brought home. We are knocking on the door of 100 radical terrorists wanting to do harm against Americans, dead. And we are trying to get ahead of what we know is coming, which is complete near civil war in Afghanistan, trying to get stability in Congo. Obviously, we see what's happening in Haiti. And every time one of these places starts becoming less secure and unstable, that is the breeding ground for radical adversarial groups that are funded by our adversaries, like China and Iran, to then conduct attacks on Americans. But they're not doing it direct. It's like via proxy. But, Haiti, if we don't pay attention to it, China will use it. Congo, will be used. And it just keeps happening.
Tim, I can't thank you enough for everything you do. You're really a remarkable man. It was such an honor to see you at the White House. And as usual, see you at the White House in your serving and serving veterans. So thank you for everything, Tim. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
God bless you.
You're amazing. Always in your corner. Let me know what you need.
You got it. Thank you. Tim Kennedy, former U.S. Army Special Forces. He was a sniper, former UFC fighter, and really a servant to our vets. Next year is going to be a tough year all the way around the world. It's going to be very tough. What he's saying is coming. People say, I think Donald Trump was saved for a reason, to save the republic. I'm not sure that we understand God's mind. It may have just been to postpone and give us more time to prepare. I'm not sure. I hope we save the republic, but it might be time to prepare, because things are very, very dicey in the world. And we just need to be prayerful, thoughtful, Jesus-like people.